The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. All right, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Maybe somebody's listening to the sponsors. I'll buy some merch someday, Christian, I hope. But only me, my kids, and my office manager bought some stuff, so we'll see. Okay, if you are listening on your favorite audio directory, and you can leave us a review, leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching us on YouTube, like the channel, subscribe, so we can keep connecting with cool guys like Christian. He'll be on in a minute. We'll talk. I'm Mitch Beinhaker, and welcome to another episode of the podcast.
People are virtual. I don't mandate people go to a specific office.
The programmers, the cybersecurity people.
Yeah, my team.
Okay.
We do have a facility in St. Louis, an office there that we can use if necessary. But most of my team is virtual.
Okay.
And the model for me is that's worked is we charge fixed fee to our clients. We don't do time and materials.
Okay. Like
and
a
then
monthly
I
fee?
give what's that?
Or a flat fee per project, or a monthly retainer?
A flat fee per project. Hi, I'm Christian Espinosa. I'm the founder and CEO of Blue Goat Cyber. Our mission is to protect medical devices from hackers. So we make sure something like an implantable, like a defibrillator, a pacemaker is secure, an in vitro diagnostic system is secure, and surgical robots are secure. So hackers can't hack into those and cause damage or harm to patients, or even kill a patient.
All right, Christian. So thanks for coming on the show. We are old school today. No background. Couldn't get my background to work today for whatever reason. You're a tech guy. I'm not a tech guy. But I appreciate you coming on the show. And where are you located, by the way?
I am in Tempe, Arizona.
Oh, okay. My daughter is in Tucson at the University of Arizona. Tempe's near Phoenix, right? In Scottsdale?
Yeah, it's right south of Scottsdale.
Got it. Okay, let me turn you up a little bit. Yeah, so it's like 12 degrees. Well, it's not 12. It's like 20 degrees. It's freezing. It's probably like, 60, 70 degrees out by you?
Yeah, probably 70 right now outside.
Yeah,
70 and sunny.
There you go. All right. So, but I appreciate you coming on, and we're going to talk about cybersecurity. I think it's interesting that you're a cybersecurity guy, but your company's a niche company. I mean, you only deal with basically protecting medical devices for the most part, right? Medical things.
That's right. That's our focus.
Yeah. But maybe we could talk first about your background in business and kind of how you get started, what your tech background is, and then we can get into all the scary stuff, how people are going to hack your defibrillator before you when you have a heart attack. So does that sound good?
That sounds perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So my background,
yeah,
I was in the Air Force for a while. So I did cybersecurity in the Air Force, helping protect classified secret networks. Then I was a defense contractor for a while, worked for DHS, Department of Homeland Security, a few other agencies. Then I branched off the commercial world. And one of my first jobs in the commercial sector was to protect or try to hack into commercial aircraft to make sure they're hack
Huh?
proof and help them get approved through the FAA, because there for a while there were a lot of concerns somebody could hack into the in-flight entertainment system and take over
Yeah,
the controls of the plane.
that's what I would think. That's the kind of things you think about. So you worked for a company, a tech company that was contracted with the airlines, right? The airline
With their
manufacturer
manufacturer, yeah,
to try and break their system and make sure it's
or
secure.
try to hack into the system, yeah, and prove to the
Right.
FAA that the system was secure.
Right, because they won't allow the right, okay.
They
I mean,
want they want to prove the aircraft to be sold unless you can
yeah.
prove that nobody can hack into it while it's on the air or in the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, I just watched that, I forget the name of it, that movie where they tried to take over that plane with Jason Bateman. Have you seen that one on Netflix? I don't want to fly anymore. They were like infiltrating the TSA and they're threatening this guy.
Oh, I did
you
see
see
that
that?
movie. That was a good movie, actually.
To get a
He
bomb
was
on
the bad
board.
guy, right?
Yeah, he was the bad guy. Got it.
Yeah,
in the
yeah, I
end.
think it was called In Flight or something.
In flight, right.
That was
Yeah,
good.
it's good, but like, do you really want to watch stuff like that and then fly? It's like, yeah, I don't know.
It's
But
also kind of bogus. I mean,
well, that's
all
the
that
thing.
hassle. You could have just flown a private jet somewhere and taken the device on a private
Exactly.
jet.
No, that wouldn't be fun then. Yeah, exactly.
That would be movie material, I guess. Yeah.
Right. And listen, I'm going to interrupt you during this thing when crazy shit pops into my head.
Oh, that's all good.
Because I'm watching the show. It's called. My wife makes fun of me. I watch a lot of British like crime dramas and stuff, and the things that the Brits put on TV, like we would never do here, right? So I'm watching this one called Spooks. It's also called MI5, I think, on BritBox. But it basically their version of the FBI, and they do, Christian, like tech things that I used to think like this is ridiculous, but now I'm thinking, well, maybe they can do that. They just hack into systems and take over streams and make people think that they're watching something or watching something else, or they inject something into somebody so they can determine where they are with some nanoparticles. I don't know what the hell they call them, but
nanobots. Yeah.
Yeah, nanobots. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So you work for this company. So did you find, like, was it a regular issue where you would find like vulnerabilities in a system and then they would fix them, or were they pretty well designed?
They were fairly well designed. We did a lot of testing in the lab that was set up exactly like the aircraft. It had to be conformed to the aircraft configuration. Then we tested on the plane, on the ground, and in the air. But we also had to look at supply chain, which is a big issue with aircraft, because there's so many suppliers.
Right.
So as example, for a test, we would have to like listen. This is a test we did for like 30 days at a time to make sure this component wasn't sending data to some, Russian site or Chinese site. So, because every now and then people, they beacon out and send data, and we had to make sure that wasn't happening
through the airwaves to air traffic control or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to do. So you wanted to make sure it wasn't going to China or Russia somewhere and they were collecting our data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's tricky because some of these devices, they don't just do it over and over and over. They do it every now and then, so you can't detect it. So we had to like be very thorough and complete and accurate with our testing. Got it.
Yeah, that stuff like scares the shit out of me. So I understand. So because I was just listening to something about Boeing and Airbus, and they're probably, because of a business podcast I was listening to. But Boeing, in order to compete with Airbus, because they get subsidies from countries and so forth, they outsourced a lot of their supply chain. So I would think that would be a huge vulnerability.
It is, and it's a big supply chain because you have a microcontroller that's inside of a subsystem that's inside of another system, that's inside of another system, and then it finally gets installed in the aircraft.
Right.
So
all
you got like this
coming from different
5 layers deep of supply chain, or maybe more than that.
Yeah. That's complicated. Very complicated. Okay. So how long did you work for them, testing the airlines?
I did that for, I think, about 4 years, and that was like a defining moment for me. I started I was a VP for the company. I was having this constant like kind of run-in with the CEO. We weren't seeing eye to eye on things. It's causing me a lot of stress, and anxiety, and I couldn't sleep. Yeah, and I just said screw it and quit that job without having another job lined up. And I had never done something like that before. No. It wouldn't have mattered if they would have paid me like millions of dollars a day. I was just done.
Well, it's not worth it if you just can't sleep at night and you're stressed out. Like, it's not worth it. Right. How much can they possibly pay you?
Yeah. So that was my moment. I said, you know what? I'm just going to take this opportunity and become a freelancer or a quote solopreneur
Hmm.
and take that route. And that's what I did. And that started me on my entrepreneur journey. I did solopreneur work, freelance work. I taught cybersecurity courses. I did
Right.
ethical hacking all across the world for about 5 years. And then I got bored with it. And I decided I want to contribute and grow more. And what other way to do that besides start a business and hire
Yeah.
people and
An
try to
actual
grow it?
company. Right.
Yeah.
Because your industry is unique, right? Because you're a tech guy, cybersecurity. There's a lot of consulting, contractual things you could do. You can, besides teaching, there's a lot of people that want to hire you, as a solopreneur, just to plug you in on a contract basis, right? You could always do that forever if you wanted to, but you're
Yeah.
always looking for another job, really, right?
Yeah. No, that was, it was very lucrative and it got kind of mundane for
Right.
me just because I was doing the same thing, making a lot of money, taking a couple months off a year. It sounds ideal, right? But
Right.
I just got bored with it. I felt like I wasn't growing. I was just
Yeah.
kind of doing the same thing over and over.
Right. Yeah. And once you're paying your bills and you're making good money, you're putting money in the bank, then it gets the point. If you have no job satisfaction and it's not interesting to you and it's not mentally stimulating, a lot of people just like, the heck with this. But now you weren't at the point where you had no job. You could start a company, right, and still do jobs like on the side for a while, so you didn't have to just stop your income, or that was hard to do.
So what I did is I took the jobs that I was doing as a solopreneur, some of them, and
Hmm.
rolled them under my company. So now the client contracted my company
I
versus me
see.
individually, which was a
Right.
separate entity. And then I started trying to get other people on my team when I hired people to take some of those jobs, and I expanded from there.
And is that how it became medical device? Like that's who you were contracting with, medical device companies, or
Yeah, ironically, one of the companies that contracted us to do training, like basic cybersecurity training and a little
Mhm.
bit of advanced training, got a contract with a medical device manufacturer that wanted cybersecurity help, and they reached out to us, and that was the first cybersecurity contract we had with a medical device manufacturer, and that was in St. Louis, and that was in 2014.
Okay.
So
It's a
that
long
was
time.
part of my first company's line of business, and we expanded on that. And then I sold that company in 2020 and started this new company in 2022 with the emphasis only on medical device cybersecurity.
I see. So that company did other things too.
It did other things, and I didn't know what I was doing. It was my first
Okay.
company, so I thought everybody needed cybersecurity, so I tried to sell cybersecurity to everybody, which effectively diluted my message, and I
Yeah.
sold to very little people.
Right.
So now I'm very focused. I know exactly who my target audience is. I know what the messaging is. I know what problem we solve. I know our
Yeah.
value proposition. It's very different than it
Right.
was. I paid a lot of the dumb tax, as they say, and I'm sure I'll pay
Well,
some more.
and I think you learn more. I mean, it's ironic, right? It's the irony of life. Nobody wants to fail and struggle or make bad decisions, but I think ultimately you learn quicker like that way, as opposed to just keep going in the direction that you think is working and then it doesn't work one day. And then what the hell do you do? But I think your comment about like being specific about your marketplace is so. I was talking to somebody yesterday about this, or last week, or whenever I did it. No, on the show I was on yesterday, I think. Like, it's the irony of business. It's totally contrary to what you'd think, right, would be, because you go into businesses as a new person, right? And you're like, I want to do business with everybody. I don't want to limit my markets, right? Everybody has cybersecurity. And then you're the guy who no one thinks of, right? I meet mortgage people like this all the time, right? I'm a business attorney. I do a lot of real estate work. They want to talk to me. And their first thing they say is, oh, we can do everything. And I said, well, then I'm never going to remember you. Like, there's no reason
Hmm.
for me to, I know people that are good at certain things, and that's what they focus on. Could you work for another company? Yeah, you could, right? I'm sure you can provide cybersecurity services to anybody, but you end up diluting, like you said, your marketplace. And ironically, when you niche down, you increase your business, like, because you become the specialist that everyone works in that industry. And they're like, well, of course we do business with Blue Goat. They're the only company, they're the main company that works with medical devices, right? And especially if you're a company that has a board to report to, you want to say that, yeah, we're working with this cybersecurity company because they work in our industry.
Right.
And I think a lot of people do make that mistake, like you made, because it's intuitive, right? The corollary is intuitive, It seems intuitive is the way I should say it, right? It seems intuitive that you should do business with everybody and anybody who's willing to do business with you. And that may be true, but it's not profitable. And it's not productive.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely not profitable. And uh, it's a little bit of like counterintuitive because with my first business, I didn't have that much experience running a business. I thought
Right.
I don't want to turn down potential work.
No, of course not.
So I'm like, I'm going to keep the door open to everybody. But like you said, it doesn't work. You have to niche it down. I think about it like if I'm a consumer and I'm going to go have heart surgery,
Yeah.
do I want a general practitioner to perform heart surgery on me, or do I want to go
Right.
to a specific heart surgeon? Right? We
Yeah.
want to go towards a specialist.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you know their business, you know their device, you know like you mentioned airlines, right? It takes a certain knowledge to understand the way an airline is, the way an aircraft is built, and the supply chain and the items that go in there. If you're just you have general cybersecurity, and somebody comes to you from Boeing and says, "Hey, Christian, can you do this?" You're like, "I guess we can," but then you don't have. You're going to learn on their dime. It's what's going to happen, and you don't. I mean, I think a lot of businesses fail because they don't realize that you have to be an expert, not an expert, but a specialist in an industry. You have to build your client profile, right? Who's the best people you do business with? Who are you the most valuable to? And I think people are afraid, right? You probably were too, as a young guy starting in business. We're afraid to like close that door a little bit, narrow that pipeline, because you think that it would reduce your business. But the irony of it is it increases your business. Because, if I'm a guy with a medical device company, I go to my board, like I said before, I want to know I'm working with the heart surgeon, not the generalist.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's a good lesson for people, I think, that are listening. All right. So, but what made you sell the company to begin with? Was it because you like medical device, you wanted to be more specific, or somebody just gave you an opportunity to sell? Like, what happened with that? Why'd you exit that business?
So it was during COVID, and
Okay.
we did in-person training.
Oh,
That was about 40% of our revenue, and that went
that
out the
went
window.
away. Yeah.
So
Do it on Zoom.
nobody wanted to do it, on Zoom. In cybersecurity, people are on Zoom all the time. In my industry, people have been using Zoom way before
Before I even
COVID.
knew what
So
it was.
we prefer in person.
Right.
We did do some classes on Zoom, but
Limited.
most of our classes we had to cancel. So that was one reason. And then also a lot of clients or prospects were unsure of the future and wouldn't make purchasing decisions. And a lot of our prospects went out of business during COVID.
Right.
So I was getting pretty stressed and burnt out, and I had many offers to buy the company. And the one offer, which I thought at the time was a good offer, I decided to take. It was a company that was going from the OTC to NASDAQ.
Okay.
And I sold my company for stock. And I thought, okay, if I can help them get from the OTC over the counter to the NASDAQ, then I can cash out and have a decent exit. But
And
it didn't quite work out like that.
Because why? They didn't make it to the NASDAQ, or their stock crashed, or?
They made it to the NASDAQ. And while I was employed with the company, there was like this kind of BS constant blackout period where I could never sell the stock.
Yeah, it gets restricted. Yeah.
Right, but there was arbitrary blackout periods. There's really no reason other than
Yeah.
they just didn't want anybody to sell the stock.
Right. They were
So
trying.
I was like, I need to leave the company. So I quit the company, and then I started. It took a long time to get my stock transferred to where I could sell it.
Right.
But when I quit the company, the stock was like at $5 and something,
Yeah.
and I could only sell so many shares a day. And it quickly went down to like 8 cents. So I was selling on the way down to like
Right.
8 cents. So it's like all this money I thought, have like all these shares times
Right.
$5 equals a certain
Right.
amount. Those same shares times 8 cents is not that much.
A little bit lower. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I know companies that have been in those positions. I call it a death spiral.
Yes.
It's kind of like what happens, right? I mean, again, do you think if you stayed with the company, the stock price would have held up, or you really had nothing to do with that?
I wasn't aligned with the vision of the leadership of the company, and I couldn't handle working there anymore. So I would have left regardless.
Yeah. Okay. So you sold the company, but got very little for it, but learned a lot, I guess. One is don't go public, I guess. I have no idea. But you were you working for medical device companies there? Was that some of your clients?
That was some of the clients because I brought them over with
You took
my
those.
past company,
Yeah.
but the parent company didn't really want to focus on medical device cybersecurity, so
They didn't care.
they didn't care that much. So I formed Blue Goat Cyber to focus specifically on that and reclaim some of my past clients as well.
Got it. Got it. But it's the same, isn't it the same business model as it was with the airlines? They're hiring you to test the security of whatever particular device they use, because a lot of these devices are Wi-Fi now or on the internet or whatever, right?
Ironically, it's the exact same model because the FAA
Yeah.
for aircraft manufacturers mandates specific things. So the aircraft manufacturer has to do specific cybersecurity testing and meet all these requirements.
Right.
For medical devices in the United States, the FDA mandates specific things. And the reality is, nobody cares about cybersecurity unless it's mandated or they've had a
Right.
data breach.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very similar. And I like to make that analogy because the FAA mandated it for aircraft and the FDA mandates it for medical devices.
Right. And you just assume that it's secure when you're the user. When you're the patient, you take it for granted. You don't even know what's happening. But you're right. Without government regulation, nobody would test these things. They'd fix them when there's a problem.
Yeah.
If you're the guy, right?
Well, the guidance from the FDA really didn't come out till September of 2023 to really up the ante on cybersecurity. Before then, it was kind of like the Wild West. Anything got through.
Yeah,
So we're
because
trying to
nothing
address
really
the
happened,
legacy
right?
systems, but
Right.
there's still a lot of challenges with that.
Well, I would think also, and correct me if I'm wrong, as time went on, 21, 22, coming out of COVID, more and more and more of these devices are internet enabled, Wi-Fi ready, because now they're collecting data and it goes to the doctor or whatever from the patient. And the old days, even if you had what did my son used to have when he was younger? A take-home EEG system, right? And they'd wire him up, and he'd bring this box with him that hung on his shoulder, and the data would be stored in the device, and then he'd have to deliver the device to the doctor. They would download the data. I'm sure now it's probably internet ready, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it
now
probably
we work with
transmits the
systems
data.
similar to that.
Yeah,
And they either connect to a Wi-Fi and send it directly to the cloud, or they connect to a mobile app, which then sends it to the cloud. So now we have more ways into that device to hack into it, basically,
yeah, right. Because there's more, right? Of
or
course.
steal the
Oh,
data. Yeah,
right. If it's a hard device and there's no connectivity, it's totally safe, right?
not totally safe, but you have to have physical access to it,
Yeah,
obviously.
got it. Right. You can mug the guy, but that's about it. Okay. So let's talk about the business side of it, though. What's the business model? Is everyone virtual? Do you have staff support for yourself? You obviously have business development, you have work, contract work, and you got to run the business. So what has that all kind of laid out?
Uh, People are virtual. I don't mandate people go to a specific
The
office. We do,
programmers, the cybersecurity people.
yeah, my team. We
Okay.
do have like a facility in St. Louis, an office there
Okay.
that we can use if necessary. But most of my team is virtual,
Okay.
and the model for me is that's worked is we charge fixed fee to our clients. We don't do time and materials,
Okay. Like a
and then
monthly
I
fee?
give a what's that?
Or a flat fee per project or a monthly
A, f-
retainer?
a flat fee per project. Yeah,
Okay.
we've been doing this for 10 years now,
Right.
so I know like our value proposition and what it costs
Right.
and what our margins should
Yeah,
be.
mine's the same way. If I'm working on a project, I know how much it can cost. I know it, but it took a while to know that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Most of our competitors do time and materials, and they give a low price and then they increase the price throughout the
Yeah.
engagement.
Lawyers do this all the time, and then they're dissatisfied.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we lost a engagement this morning to one of our competitors because they just did that. They offered a low price
Right.
and then they're going to increase the scope later. So
You
the
know
price
that's
is
what
going to
they,
end up
yeah,
being more than our price.
much more,
But
of
it's
course.
easier to sell to leadership or management if it's looks low at the beginning, I think.
Yeah.
So that's it's something we're trying to refine our value proposition. But the thing that has helped a lot with that fixed fee structure
Yeah.
is I give my team a percentage of the fixed fee. So they are incentivized to become more efficient and to make the process more efficient, because then they make more money, they spend less time on a
Right.
project.
Move on to the next project. They still get paid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really helped drive a lot of efficiency
Smart.
on my end with my team versus just paying them, a salary,
Right.
regardless of how many hours it takes.
So do they get paid a lower hourly plus a percentage? Is that how that works, or
They just get paid a percentage,
just a percentage of the
a,
project?
a, a base plus the percentage of the
A
project.
small base. Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
All right. What about the admin of your business? How do you run? How do you administer the business? Billing, dealing with the clients, bringing them on board, all that type of stuff.
So I'm still pretty involved with sales. I think, as a founder company, you need to be the best
Yeah,
salesperson.
you do.
But I have a sales team that handles our
Okay.
sales process,
Okay.
and that's very dialed in. There's always room for improvement, but it's very dialed in. We use HubSpot. We have
Hmm.
discovery call. We have playbooks.
Yeah.
We have discovery decks we walk through. It's very dialed in, and the rest of the admin, I've contracted some of it out. Like I have a
Hmm.
fractional CFO,
Okay.
which his team brought on a bookkeeper and an accountant, and then I do most of the marketing myself. I'm pretty good at marketing. I found that I'm better at marketing than anyone I've ever tried to hire in the past. Maybe I just haven't
Okay.
found the right person.
Okay.
And then I have a social media person that does public relations and social media. That's really doing an awesome job. Like we're all over social media, and
Yeah, like you're on the podcast or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and we have our own podcast. That's
Mhm.
something I started initiative. We have our own webinar. I've got a book I'm writing. I'm
Oh,
almost
nice.
done on medical device cybersecurity, because my goal is to become the market leader this year. So I'm doing all these things to for the long game to become the market leader.
Right. Are there a lot of players in the medical device cybersecurity arena?
Uh, there's a couple I consider competitors. There's a lot of people that are trying to play in this space that don't really know what they're doing, and
Hmm.
clients are, like I said before, because their price is lower than ours,
Yeah, they have
paying
no
them
way
to
else to
learn.
evaluate. Right.
Yes, because a normal cybersecurity company or traditional cybersecurity company doesn't know anything about medical device
Right.
cybersecurity. It's not cybersecurity as cybersecurity across the board.
No, it's
A
totally
medical
different.
device, there's very specific requirements. You're looking at the impact to a patient versus stolen credit card information.
Right.
It's the risk
Got
is much
HIPAA
more
issues,
because
right?
you can kill somebody or
Yeah, HIPAA
harm them.
applies, I would think, right? You got along with the FDA requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not like, oh, we can figure it out. You don't know the regulations. You're going to, I mean, the doctor and the companies almost can't even take that risk with a company that doesn't really know the industry.
Well, it's a lot of consumer education. We have to educate the prospect that our value proposition is, we know like what kind of risk matrix the FDA is looking for.
Hmm.
We know what the deliverables are they want. We have gotten 150 plus devices through the FDA.
Right.
We see other companies that chose a different vendor. We see the deficiency response when they come to us for help.
Yeah.
So we got all this knowledge, but people sometimes still make a different choice. They'll
Right.
choose a normal, traditional cybersecurity company, and then I just think on the back end, we'll see that prospect later when they get a bunch of deficiencies.
Right.
You know?
It's laws the same
Unfortunately,
way.
that's the way it happens. I think
Yeah.
maybe we'll charge double because they didn't go with us the
Right.
first time.
No, but look, business owners do that all the time. They go with a general lawyer, somebody who doesn't specialize and know their industry, or maybe they're not a litigator, whatever it is. And you just know they're going to come back later. It's going to cost more now because you're going to have to fix everything that this person did,
Yeah.
and if they went the right way at the beginning. But I would think that gives you a little bit of a competitive advantage from a marketing standpoint, right? It's a good story to tell. It's a good value proposition to sell because it's an easy sell. I mean, these device companies, they know that there's FDA requirements. They know about HIPAA.
Mhm.
So I would think that you could evaluate pretty quickly if, in a meeting, if the person really kind of knows what they're talking about or not, right? Or maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because everyone, the point of contact we're talking to typically on the sell side, wants to
Yeah.
choose us, but then their management says, well, pick three vendors and we'll do an evaluation. And then, often it boils down to price.
Right.
So they'll
It's
choose a company
a bad
less
way to go.
qualified
Right.
because of the price.
Right.
And the irony is, some of these products take millions of dollars and multiple rounds of funding to bring to market.
Like
And if
drugs.
they have a
Yeah.
deadline of like end of March 31st, they want to bring this thing or get it submitted and cleared by the FDA. If they have a bunch of cybersecurity issues at the end, it's going to push that deadline way out and cost
Yeah.
way more money.
Right. Because they got to redesign whatever it is the problem is, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Maybe completely. Maybe whatever it is, it's not just a quick fix.
And we've had that happen where a company didn't think about cybersecurity at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And they made a decision early on in their development to choose a specific microcontroller that did not support secure boot, as example. And then they had to remove all their functionality of the device and make it a standalone device, kind of like the device your son used, because without that secure boot functionality, it wasn't secure enough to support connection to the cloud or a 4G
Right.
connection or a 5G connection. So we try to convince manufacturers to work with us early on, early and
Right.
often versus at the very end. But most people
Right.
forget about cybersecurity to the very end, and they're like,
Yeah.
we try to like bolt it on, and it's not very effective. It's
Doesn't
much more
work.
effective. It's
Right.
designed in.
Yeah. So you may have to redesign the whole thing. You can't just do 2.0. It may have to be a whole different kind of unit, right?
That's right. A whole different unit, different motherboard, or different microcontroller,
Yeah.
everything.
Right. Right. Exactly. Okay. Why don't we take a few minute commercial for a couple of the sponsors that I have, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more about. I don't know if it's beyond the scope of the podcast, but I'd like to talk more about like the world of cybersecurity when it comes to these types of things that we all use on a daily basis. Things we should worry about, things we should not worry about, things, that type of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Let me mute us, and then we'll be back in a minute. Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show. All right. So, Christian, this is a good conversation about being an expert in your field and niching down, and people should learn from your experience. But I also want to talk about the cybersecurity stuff. So, because now I'm thinking, well, if I go to the doctor and he gives me some device that I'm going to use, or even an app, and I'm going to send him data, that it's secure. So, but there are guardrails in place. I understand. There's the FDA, there's HIPAA, there's all those types of things. But things get through the system, right? They don't hire you; they hire a generalist, and things. But you said the FDA has become pretty better since 2023 at being more scrutinizing of these things.
Yeah, since the end of 2023, and then earlier in 2025 in January, they came out with some guidance on AI-enabled medical devices as well.
Yeah, right. That's the next wave. So what kind of things make these devices potentially vulnerable? Is that a fair question?
That's a fair question.
Okay.
What makes them vulnerable is this desire to connect them to everything, to connect them to the healthcare delivery organizations network.
Right.
Like hospital networks are, I like to say, hostile. Any device on there is going to be compromised. Like we've done a lot of penetration tests against hospitals, and we've never not gotten into everything in a hospital. We have a 100% success rate, and medical devices
Or
are on
failure rate,
hospital
depending on how
environments.
you look at it. Right? Depending on which side you're on. If you're the hospital, it's 100% failure rate, right? So
Yes,
you're
yeah,
telling me you're able to hack into the hospital to reach any of these devices that are basically on their network and
that's right.
communicating back and forth to their stations, because the devices, right? If the nurse station gets data, they must be tied into machines that are in the patient's rooms, right?
Yeah, yeah, we've
Yeah.
been able to hack in the hospital, like plant a device at a kiosk where people could browse internet and remotely uh, connect to that device, and then from that device go into the operating room and connect to uh, patient monitoring systems, as an example.
Jesus Christ. Okay. This sounds like this is like sci-fi movies that people, oh, that can't happen. You're like, yeah, it can. So
Well, on
so
average,
what
yeah,
happens in that process if your team hacks into the hospital, you you go to them and say, listen, we can access any device on your network. It's really easy. What then takes place? What's the next step? How do you lock it down?
yeah. Well, this is where the challenge comes into play because the hospital network,
Yeah,
they're not typically good at securing that. But then, even if they're good at securing their own network,
right.
they have no control over the medical devices on their network.
Because
That
those are coming
device,
from another manufacturer,
that's right.
third party, right?
So they're
Right.
relying on the manufacturer to
Right.
update these devices. And sometimes it requires a field engineer to come visit it physically to update it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it requires a update over the air, which is why the device has to be connected to the internet.
Right.
So yeah, it's a big challenge, and a lot of hospital IT administrators get frustrated because they have all these devices on the network that they have no control over and no
Right.
visibility into.
So when you hack into a hospital system, that doesn't mean you necessarily can hack the device, because the devices have their own, which hopefully you put in place, security pieces to it, right? Is that right?
Correct. Not every device, once we hack into the hospital network, is hackable. We can't
Right.
always connect to the other devices, but a lot of them are set up with default credentials. So a lot of medical devices have a browser interface. You go to the browser
Okay.
interface and you look up, okay, for this device, these are the default credentials, and they usually work.
When you say default browser, you like a URL
Yeah,
that
like if you
finds that
manage
device.
your router at your house, right?
Yeah.
Your Wi-Fi router, you go to whatever the 192.168.0.1 or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
it brings up the browser interface. If you don't change the default username and password, then
Yeah.
anybody can
Anybody
get
can
in with
get in.
that. It's the same
Right.
thing with medical devices.
Works the same way.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So so what do? Do you just change the user and password? That's enough?
Well, we
No.
tell the hospital that they should change those. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you think.
I mean that's step one. There's
Right.
typically more to it than that, but yeah, this first step is when you set something up, don't use the default username and password.
Right.
Hackers all know the default credentials for everything.
I would think that would be right. Admin, password, and whatever it
Admin,
is. Yeah.
Cisco, whatever it is, right?
Right. Exactly. So what kind of, I mean, I understand that they're looking for data in a lot of cases, but is there a way for hackers to like control devices in the hospital, like in an operating room? You hear about robotics and all the kind of stuff that they supposedly are going to be able to do with 5G remotely.
Yeah, there's 100% they can control the devices, like a surgical robot that's performing surgery on your spine, for
Yeah.
instance. Those things have had vulnerabilities, and people have been able to hack into that robot and could paralyze you.
Yeah.
Even devices we don't really think about, like we work with clients that have a laser that treats your acne, And
Okay.
we've been able to hack into that device and turn the cooling mechanism off in the laser and increase the intensity of the laser and burn the hell out of your face. So there's a and these are in med spas and in other
Yeah.
organization places. But yeah, there's all these devices out there that often have some sort of vulnerability. Like I was thinking yesterday, I go to a med spa here and they have a cryo chamber, and
Right.
I was thinking, what if somebody could hack in that cryo chamber and like shut the door? So I'm
Right.
stuck in this freezer for more
Yeah.
than 2 minutes. I can't get out. I'm gonna
Yeah.
freeze to death.
Drop the thing down to 1,000 degrees below zero or something like that. Just
I think
freeze solid.
it's already down to like negative 270 or something.
Right.
It's pretty
But you're
cold.
only supposed to be in there for a very short period of time. Yeah,
Exactly.
my
I can
wife.
only handle a couple minutes in there.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you see, there's movies like that where the person gets locked in the sauna, or they get locked in the tanning bed, right? And the thing gets turned up, and they can't get out, and they're crisp. But I guess that's it. I mean, it's kind of the world we live in, right? I mean, everything is more connected, and even the EMR regulations with medical, practitioners, they were all required to. I don't know if they all have, but they're supposed to be electronic medical records, so you can go to another doctor and they have access to your records and you can get them there and people know what you're doing. And so it should be better care. But at the same token, it makes us all more vulnerable. I mean, it increases your industry and your possibility of doing business, but it just creates a problem on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a problem a lot of people don't understand. They don't understand the risk, but like with a defibrillator, if you just kind of zoom out and think about it, like
Yeah.
the doctor has to have a mechanism to get data off that device periodically, and that mechanism is wireless because they're not going to take it out of you,
Right.
and that's via Bluetooth. And there's been a lot of vulnerabilities with defibrillators and pacemakers. Like Dick Cheney, this was a long time ago, but he had his wireless capability disabled because there was a threat where someone could wirelessly connect to his defibrillator and shock him to death.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He's the vice president, so I got to protect him.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, you don't think about that stuff, but that must be an ongoing problem, right? I mean, I would think that if you mentioned before that you charge per project, right? So if they have a device, you go in there, you check the vulnerabilities. But if they have a supply chain providing parts and subparts to parts
Mhm.
of a device, isn't that testing and work that you have to do ongoing? I mean,
Yeah, so
right?
we do what's called pre-market. We do all the
Yeah.
testing to get the device, cleared by the FDA or whichever regulatory authority. But you're right; it's continuous. And after the device is on the market, there's post-market management required. So that requires continuous monitoring of all the software components. It
Right.
requires annual testing. It requires monitoring for new vulnerabilities that might affect an existing component. So there's all these things that have to be done. It's not just like once it's cleared, it's out there and it's fine because vulnerabilities evolve, uh, exploits evolve,
Yeah.
and this whole landscape is constantly changing.
Right. And just because you tested one of the parts to make sure that it's not sending data in the wrong place doesn't mean the next piece that comes through the door isn't, designed to do that. So when you get a client, I mean, they're like a client for life unless they go to another cybersecurity company or they go out of business.
Yeah, that's the model. We prove ourselves with the pre-market work, which is a
Right.
project, and then our post-market work is an annual contract where we take the burden off of them and we respond if anybody notices a vulnerability. We triage it and see if it's a true positive or a false positive, and we help them fix the vulnerability if it's increases the risk of the device. And yeah, we do all of that for them.
And it's a flat annual fee
Correct. Mhm.
for the maintenance contract, basically.
Right. Exactly.
Right. No, it's an ideal business, it's almost like a subscription based business. They can't keep operating without keeping testing.
Yeah, a lot of people want to do that themselves, but it ends up costing them more money to do it themselves than to outsource it because they have to stand up this whole organization. They have to train people. They have to keep the staff. It's more economical for them to outsource it to us because this is an area of our expertise, and we already have the infrastructure set up, and we have the team that knows what they're doing about this.
Yeah, I mean, you're the fractional cyber people, is what basically you are.
Yeah, that's a good way of
And
looking
you're
at it.
always working on stuff and always seeing stuff that's going on. But I assume that there's a lot of NDAs and confidentiality agreements that you got to sign because you're getting access to tech that may be proprietary, right?
It's not so much the tech; it's the source code. We often see the source code, which is the intellectual property of the manufacturer,
Right.
and that source code is what's valuable to them. I mean, we deal with manufacturers, like we have one of them that has a very innovative product that can take your blood and basically turn it into a powder, like dehydrate it, and then reconstitute it later. So that's an innovative thing that's there's nothing like that out there, right?
Right. Right.
And that solves the whole blood transport and blood storage
Storage
problem.
issue. Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, if someone stole that intellectual property and built their own device to do the same thing and got to market quicker, obviously that would be a problem for the manufacturer.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So, what would you say is the most challenging about running your business?
About running my business,
Yeah, running you're the boss, right? So you got to run the company. You don't get to do all the work anymore. What's the most challenging about running the business?
scaling the business is the most challenging. Scaling it at the right pace. But my first business, it took me 6 years to make a fair amount of money to sell the business. In this business now, in a little over a year, I've doubled the revenue I had in 6 years of my previous business. So I'm scaling a lot faster.
Right.
So getting the right people in the right seats, the right org structure, the right systems,
Mm-hmm.
bringing the right people on board at the right time, not having a bloated payroll too soon, having cash flow come in at the right time. These are all things that all go together. And I feel like with a business, there's all these
Yeah.
dials,
Yeah.
and if you turn one
It's an
dial up,
analogy.
another dial goes down, and it's like this
Right.
constant like balancing act.
Yeah.
Sales goes up, delivery might be down. You turn delivery up, sales might go down. So it's like this constant like balance you have to have. And I try to do as much planning as I can,
Yeah.
but not everything goes as planned as you know.
Never does. That's why you do planning, right? Because then you got to adjust. I think those are good. That's a good comment. I've had people on the show too talk about scaling. You can't just scale. Like you can't just bring in all kinds of business because then you might have customer service issues, right? Where you don't have the people to deliver. And these people your clients have real issues. They got deadlines, they got to meet FDA requirements, they got money on the line, they want to get it out. If you take on too many contracts, and then the corollary is the same thing, like you just said. All right, so let's do the other part of it. Let's beef up our staff. Let's find all these people, hire them. We got this big bloated payroll, and then you can't get the contracts.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a chicken and an egg type of thing. And that's for a lot, not just your business, it's for a lot of people. Scaling
Yeah.
is not something that everyone can do. And it's not something that everyone's equipped to do. But you don't want to be too equipped, like you said, because you could end up with a big cash flow problem.
Yeah, it's the way I like to look at it is what got me to $1 million is not going to get me to $5 million,
No.
and what got me to 5 is not going to get me to 25. So I gotta
Right.
you have to change your mindset and change your organizational structure, and get the right people in place and empower them, but also have the right roadblocks in place or boundaries so that they're not going to go too far one way or the other way.
Right. So you find that's a constant like balancing act in terms of business contracts, new clients, service of the existing ones, adding staff.
Yeah, it's also
You gotta work
like
your
I have
way
to
up
keep an
this
eye on
way.
I have to keep an eye on what my competitors are doing too. And a service industry isn't as valuable for resale.
Yeah.
Mine has annual contracts, which helps,
Right.
but
That's helped. Right.
we have a roadmap to create a platform that we can interact with our clients to facilitate things and make it a lot easier. So once I have these products in place, it'll really increase the value that my business has or brings to the table. So
Yeah.
that's all on the roadmap, but you have to have these things on the roadmap and you have to plan it out, like I said. Otherwise, you're just gonna, if you try to just ad hoc it, you're gonna get to a point where you're dropping the ball in too many places, and
That's why people
clients are gonna be
fail.
upset and
Yeah.
go somewhere else.
Go somewhere else. People don't realize that. Like people always say, well, if I have too many clients, I mean, that's a problem I want to have. No, probably not.
Well,
It's
then if
going
I
to
have too many
cost you
clients, they're
sales.
not going to want to do the annual contract, which is really where the
Right.
value is, right?
Yeah, that's where you build your value. So I would assume your company's fairly young, this one. So I assume you don't have like an exit strategy, and maybe you have one in mind, but you're not like, are you
I have,
building the business to sell it someday, or are you just building the business so it keeps going and pays your bills and improves your lifestyle and you like doing the work? And
I think you should always build a business with selling it in mind, even if you don't want to sell it, because the things that you have to go through or think about in order to make it attractive to a potential buyer
Yeah.
are actually things you need in your business regardless.
Anyway, right.
Yes.
Right.
Like you
No,
can't be the single point of failure. Like I don't want to sell my business and I'm married to it for 10 years, right? I need to like get myself out of the equation, for example. I need
right.
to have the systems in place so the business can run itself and I can hire somebody new and they can easily step into a position. I need
Yeah.
to have all these things in place, which are lucrative or attractive to someone that wants to buy the business. So yeah, I
Of
think you should
course.
always have it in mind that what do I need to do to make my business attractive to somebody that wants to buy it? Because those things will help your business.
Right. And shouldn't, and whether you're selling it ultimately or you're not, the business should not be reliant, significantly on you, not as it
Right.
grows,
Exactly.
because if not, you're right. You sell the business, you're going to have to be on a 10-year contract for these people to survive because
And then
they
you could
need
be working for somebody else for 10 years. Yes.
Exactly. And then what's the point, right? Then you might as well just keep running if you got to be on a 10-year contract, you might as well not sell the business.
Exactly.
You might as well just run the business, take 10 years, re-equip it so you don't need to keep staying on it and sell it then. And you make more money.
Exactly.
That's my feeling about it. All right. This is all awesome. So, so advice for people, we're talking like general people, like things that you should be aware of from a cybersecurity standpoint. If, like I'm going to the doctor, maybe that's not a good question to ask because maybe people shouldn't be thinking about that. But if I'm going to the doctor and I got to use a medical device, what are the kind of things I should be asking about, worrying about, looking for, or is it something I should just not worry about?
I think it depends on your risk appetite.
Okay.
I think we need to take ownership of an agency of our lives and our decisions and not rely on other people. I think we can certainly take advice. So if a doctor says, you need to take this or have this implantable, why not find out more about that implantable? Because if something happens with it, the doctor is not going to care that much. But if it could kill you, you probably care more. So you need to take your life in your own hands and do your own research. And I'm not trying to scare everybody, but the doctor is not going to know anything about this medical device, other than it's going to solve a problem. From a cybersecurity perspective, you can Google that device, Google it, and add cybersecurity to it, and probably do your own research and say, I really don't want this brand. I want this brand because this particular brand has had lots of vulnerabilities, and I'm not comfortable. But I think as consumers, we rely too much on the quote experts to guide us versus guiding ourselves. But we have to live with the consequences. So take agency of your decisions is really my advice.
All right, that's good advice because just because you went to the doctors, I mean, they're not a device expert. They're just sold the device from the rep that comes to tell them how to use it.
Yeah, and often the rep gives them some money on the table, and that's why they're using it, even though it's not that secure.
Yeah, it's the same as it's the same as the drug industry, but the drug industry is probably more heavily regulated, right? You can't do the things you used to do. Pharmaceutical companies used to pay doctors and do stuff. They can't do that anymore. There's none of that regulation.
Take them on week vacations to Maui and stuff, right?
Is there regulation in the device industry that you can't do that kind of stuff, or really there isn't at this point?
I'm not sure if there is one or not. And that's a good question. I have to research that.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know. Can we, if we're selling some sort of the device, can we bring 350 doctors to, like you said, Maui for a 10-day conference to show them all of our devices, or is it not allowed? And we know the drug companies can't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to look that up.
Maybe it's behind the times. Yeah. What's the best way? People want to learn about what you're doing, and maybe they're even a device company listening. Blue Goat Cyber. What's the best way to connect with you?
They can connect with me on my website with the company on bluegoatcyber.com. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and pretty much all social media.
Okay, good. All right. So we will check in with you at some point. If there's what we're going to do is if there's like a device hack or something and it's big news, I'm going to reach out to you. We're going to do an episode about what happened and how they fixed it. And I don't know, something like that. So I always got you to go to
that'd be awesome.
times of panic. So we'll see. All right, Christian, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I also appreciate you accommodating my schedule today. And I don't know, go play some golf or enjoy the weather. It's freezing here. I can't do anything. So, next time I'm out in Arizona, maybe we'll grab some coffee or something.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Hang out. We'll play the credits and let me mute you there.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhakerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhaker and produced by Beinhaker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhakerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.